Coming up on this episode of the Upper One podcast, the connection between New Mexico and Alaska. And it's not just me.
And now, podcasting from the great state of Alaska, this is the Upper One Podcast.
All right, thanks for joining me. Welcome back to episode 39. I know it's been a while. I'm just not getting enough out there like I like, but thanks for joining me. I'm going to tell you, as in the intro, what connects New Mexico, more specifically the area of where I'm from, Grant County, New Mexico, Silver City, Hurley, Tyrone. What connects all that to Alaska? But to start, let me just say, I'm by myself, so there's no political talk here. I don't do political and I don't do religion on the podcast, but you can't get away from hearing this and that, like the global warming, right? There are certain people that say global warming, and I know there's this and that contributes to what they may be talking about, but this is Alaska. There is no warming. It's winter. Today is December 23rd. So first off, on the news, what they reported, they start measuring snow, and the official measure in snow is Anchorage, somewhere over by the airport, I think, which kind of, to me, isn't right because I live 800 feet above sea level, and where they measure is probably 20 feet above sea level, if that. So, like I said, today's December 23rd. We're 2 days away from Christmas. We just celebrated what would have been Hobo Jim's 69th birthday, I believe, or 70th birthday 2 days ago. So happy heavenly birthday, Hobo Jim. Now, from September 1st to December 18th, Anchorage has had the snowiest snowfall on record. Let's put it this way. Last year, 2022, up to the 18th of December, we only had 55.2 inches, which out of the top five, that's number 4. 82, it was 52.4. 96, it was 58.5. 94, 68.6. This year, 70.1. 70 inches of snow. I'm 6'8". That's 80 inches. So that's 10 inches shy of my height. Normal to date, up to the 18th of December, 29.5 inches. So far, just for December, 29.6 inches. Like I said, 70.1 for the season. The article says we had 40 some inches in November and then just shy of 30, so 29.1, 29.6 inches for December. That's just in 2 months we've got the snowiest for the year. The 2012 season remains the snowiest of all time, where the city, that's the entire year, the city got 134.5 inches of snow. But December wasn't anywhere close to what we are right now. They weren't even close to 70 inches. So I think we're going to have some snow. Or maybe it decides to not snow the rest of the year. I don't know. After all that is said and done, let's just catch up a little bit about hockey. My team is 1 game below 500. I think we have 6 wins, 7 losses, and then we have 1 tie. This last game that we played was our last game before the Christmas break. I had an assist on the first goal. I scored the second goal. And then if you know anything about hockey, you know what a hat trick is, where you score 3 goals. Well, there's one called the Gordie Howe hat trick. And the Gordie Howe hat trick is an assist, a goal, and a fight in the same game. I came pretty dang close. And actually, I mean, I guess you could call an argument a fight, if you're yelling back and forth with somebody, that could be considered a fight, but it didn't go in the scorebook, so technically it wasn't. Not that I would be fighting, but I came pretty close if you think about it. There's just a situation where this guy that I'm talking about was my teammate last year. He got a little angry with me, not knowing all the facts, and he ended up cross-checking me from behind as a coward would do. And yes, I'd say that because I'm still pretty upset about it. And to be honest, I was going to retaliate if the situation had arisen. Going into our 2-week break for Christmas and New Year's and not having games for 2 weeks, I was going to do something. I'm not going to, not nothing serious, but I would have taken a penalty. Let's just say that I would have taken a penalty just to retaliate. So anyhow, but yeah, I was talking with a good friend of mine who has coached hockey before, and I was telling him that story, and he said, "Yeah, look at that. You could have had a Gordie Howe hat trick." And I was like, "You know what? You're right." That being said, we are on our Christmas break. We don't have another game till January 3rd, which is a Wednesday, but good news for my team having to work the next day. Our game is early. It's a 7:15 game, so not the 10:45 game like normal on a Wednesday night. So several months ago, there was a post on one of the groups that I follow on Facebook. Someone had asked, "Tell me where you're from without telling me where you're from." So without directly saying Silver City, New Mexico, tell me something that's where you're from, something about that area or a story or history or something, right? So I found a story and I put it on there. I don't recall anybody responding to it yet. I don't recall whether they may have with the correct answer or knowing. But so my story was I found a story that is in the Pinos Altos Museum from the Silver City Herald from back in the 1800s. Or maybe early 1900s was the story. But so back in the 1800s, there was a sheriff in Grant County. His name was Harvey Whitehill, and this was the story he told. It turns into being like the start of some of our Southwest history. So this is what this story is about. This is where this sheriff's story ties in. So September or November of 1859, Henry McCarty was born in New York City. He's Irish Catholic. His parents were Catherine and Patrick. He has a younger brother named Joseph. I believe that Patrick had died, so Catherine had moved her and her sons to Indianapolis following that death of her husband. She met a man by the name of William Henry Antrim. In 1870, they moved to Wichita, Kansas, and then they moved again where Catherine married Antrim in Santa Fe, New Mexico in 1873. So young Henry, was 14 years old. Shortly after that marriage, they moved from Santa Fe to Silver City, New Mexico. And if you've seen the movie Tombstone, you know that Val Kilmer's character was Doc Holliday. I've talked about it before. I'm related to Wyatt Earp on my mom's side. My wife is related to Doc Holliday on her dad's side. And in that movie, Val Kilmer's character, Doc Holliday, he portrayed him, and he's, Doc Holliday, back then they called it consumption. Nowadays they call it tuberculosis. That's what Doc Holliday died from. And one of the treatments, I would guess you'd call it a non-clinical treatment because, you're not in a hospital or being treated that way, but is to move to warmer climates, and it helped with that. So I'm assuming that the move to Santa Fe and to Silver City down into the warmer climates is because of her tuberculosis and consumption. So they moved to Silver City. Joseph took on Antrim's surname, so instead of being McCarty anymore, he became a Antrim. Then, shortly before Catherine's death, William abandoned the boys, leaving them orphans. That's, Henry was just about 14, getting ready to turn 15. So he's orphaned in Silver City, New Mexico. I think that Catherine she washed laundry and folded laundry for this boarding house or something. And I know that the story said that the owner of the boarding house let Henry stay there. And that was only for a short time because he was caught stealing September 16th of 1875. I know after the stepfather abandoned him, he got into the trouble, kind of went after him, looked for him in Arizona. He was pretty much written off. The stepfather wrote him off, so he turned to a life of crime. He was charged with, like I said, caught stealing food September 16th, 1875, charged with theft 10 days later for robbing a Chinese laundry, stealing clothes, and 2 pistols, and he was jailed for that. The sheriff, Grant County Sheriff Harvey Whitehill, he recalled stating that he arrested McCarty for stealing 2 pounds of butter, taking $70 from a Chinaman in Georgetown. So all the while, this story says that while McCarty was jailed, he complained of harsh conditions, that one of the other jailers was mistreating him. So he was given some freedoms, which led to McCarty escaping up a rope that he had somebody lower down the chimney. The story does say that this chimney wasn't very big, and that they didn't know how, maybe it was the sheriff's recollection, but they didn't know how this Henry got out. But from what other stories say, he was a pretty skinny kid. So, you come out of birthing canal, you jigsaw puzzle your way out with the doctor's help. I imagine that you can work your way, if you're a real skinny kid, you can work your way up a small chimney. So he escaped from that. He was later reported as a fugitive by the Silver City Herald. So here's where this ties into this life of crime and young Henry McCarty. Sheriff Whitehill's story said he believed he was the first to arrest McCarty. This was his first arrest. The Herald story was first published about him and about the escape. Less than 2 years later, Henry McCarty started going by the alias Billy Antrim, and more famously, William Bonney. And about that time, he killed a blacksmith in Arizona. 1876, he was known as Kid Antrim. People were calling him Kid just because he was young, clean-shaven. And then 1877, known as William H. Bonney. By December of 1880, the Las Vegas Gazette in Las Vegas, New Mexico, donned him Billy the Kid. And we all know the legend where July 14th, 1881, he was killed by Pat Garrett. One of the other parts of this is from December of 1880 to July of 81. That's only 8 months. He was known as Billy the Kid. He was 21 when he died, and in that 8 months, well, in his time, you know, he's got a huge legend, but Billy the Kid was only 8 months. But in his time, he killed 21 people, according to these records. So, and like I said, this is all tying in Silver City. This is all tying into the main part of this story that I'm going to get to here in a minute. But just some more, some more connection between my wife and I, not just Doc Holliday and Wyatt Earp, but I was reading some other stuff that some of the people that, if you know the story where Billy the Kid was running around all through southwest New Mexico, southeast Arizona, the county that Shanna is from, there is a mountain named Mount Graham, and on the Tucson side, which would be the southwest side of that mountain range, there was a army fort, which is now a prison. And that's where he had gotten in with some people that it turned out to be in all part of this story of him becoming an outlaw and the legend that is Billy the Kid. So not only am I connected with my wife because of Doc Holliday and Wyatt Earp, we are connected by Billy the Kid too. All right, I'll be right back, and we'll get the rest of this going. How I'm going to connect New Mexico with Alaska, it's pretty simple. If you think about the history of our country, I'm going to quote Toby Keith's Should Have Been a Cowboy song. Go west, young man, haven't you been told? California is full of women, whiskey, and gold. Gold being the major component. So, most of the Western exploration back then was prospecting and entrepreneur, making money, trying to find a way to make money. Well, that's no different in Alaska. And some of this story is kind of funny because Alaska didn't become a state till 1959. A lot of this story, the companies involved I'm reading, kind of put held Alaska back from being a state earlier than it did. That would be the J.P. Morgans and the Guggenheims. They formed what would eventually become the Kennecott Copper Company, Kennecott Copper Company, and the Kennecott Mines. Well, those mines, the copper was discovered back in 1900 on the glacier that was named after a U.S. Geological Survey engineer named Robert Kennecott. That glacier, the Kennecott Glacier, was named after him. That's on Mount Blackburn, which is the highest peak in the Wrangell Mountains. It's the 5th highest in the United States. It's a volcano. It's right up there with some of the highest peaks and the highest volcanoes in the country. But, like I said, copper was found. It led to a whole lot of this and that. I think President Roosevelt, President Taft were involved. I believe President Taft was actually trying to get reelected, and because of the J.P. Morgan and the Guggenheims, they eventually formed what they called the Alaska Syndicate. And that's part of what held back the statehood that early, 40 years earlier, 45 years earlier. But all of that was involved where Robert Kennicott, his name was spelled Kennicott. When the mines were formed, they misspelled it. Either they didn't know how to spell or somebody misconstrued the letters. But the Kennicott Mine Company was formed spelling it Kennecott. I believe after all was said and done, the mines only ran operations from like 1906 to 1939. There were 5 different mines. There is a town called McCarthy that's still there today that was Kennicott back then. The mining town's still there. You can still see the buildings. There is a hotel and saloon. It's a big tourist place. People specifically come up here just to go there to see the ghost town, the mining town of Kennicott. Eventually, it became the Kennicott Copper Corporation. And by the time all was said and done, the peak year was 1916. They grossed copper. They produced copper ore valued at $32.4 million, which I believe is probably somewhere in the billions today's economy. Like I said, the mines were open from 1909 to 1938. It was temporarily closed in 1932, but it produced over 4.6 million tons of ore, which contained about just over 1 billion pounds of copper. They reported gross revenues of above 200 million and a net profit of greater than 100 million. In 1938, it was proposed to and recommended to President Roosevelt that Kennicott be preserved as a national park, which later happened in December 2nd, 1980. So with all being said and done, that's the timeline. Roughly, the earliest 1900, the mines 1909 to up until about 1939. Then it became a ghost town, and so there's that. Now, let's go over here to my hometown of Silver City, New Mexico. About 15 miles down the road to the east, there once was a town named Santa Rita. Originally, it was nothing but a fort with a church. As soon as they started adding additional buildings around the complex, the community became known as Santa Rita del Cobre. In the first half of the 20th century, the population of this town was roughly 6,000 people. Today, it is gone, swallowed up by a massive copper mine. It says, where once there was a town, there is only a gaping maw of an open pit copper mine. It wasn't. I guess the natives here in this area knew that there was copper, but it wasn't until the 18th century when the Spaniards paid attention to it. The natives were enslaved and forced to mine the metal for them. So, like I said, 1909 to 1938, 39-ish up here for the Kennecott mines. Well, 1909 to 1924, the Chino Copper Company owned and operated that Santa Rita pit. In 1924, the Chino Copper Company merged with Ray Consolidated Copper Company, which then merged with the Nevada Consolidated Company in 1926. Here's where the stories connect. In 1933, the Kennecott Copper Corporation purchased Nevada Consolidated and the Santa Rita mine. In 1980, that Kennecott Copper Corporation sold a 1/3 interest in the Santa Rita mine to the Mitsubishi Corporation, and then in 86 sold its remaining 2/3 interest in the Chino mine and the Hurley smelter to the Chino Mines Company, which is a subsidiary of Phelps Dodge. In 2007, there was some stuff in 2003 where they completed other stuff, but that was just PD buying. It looks like Phelps Dodge buying more stuff and the remaining stuff from Mitsubishi. But in 2007, a Freeport McMoran Copper and Gold Inc. acquired Phelps Dodge, including Chino. So that's where it's all tied in. The Kennecott originally started here in Alaska. I believe it's still in Utah and other places, but they eventually bought the mine 15 miles east of my hometown. Now, like I said, as long as I can remember, my dad had worked in that mine. I don't remember when he first started, but like I said, one of the things is that 1980 sell of the 1/3 interest of the Santa Rita mine to Mitsubishi. I believe there was a strike that year within those mines, but like I said, as long as I can remember, my dad worked for those mines. He retired from those mines. Just south of Santa Rita is the town of Hurley, where the smelter is. And when I was a kid, my dad's parents owned a house in Hurley. And part of that smelter was the two big smokestacks. And on one of those smokestacks, and if I remember right, they had painted it at least once, was the lettering Kennecott. So I grew up with that kind of history around me. I think there's a video you could find. I know my dad had sent me a video back when it happened. I don't remember what year, early 2000s, but they had dug trenches and they imploded those smokestacks and felled them into those trenches, whether they're buried there or they excavated them and demolished and, disposed of the mess. I don't know. I don't remember. But there is a video you can find online of at least one of those smokestacks being knocked down. So yeah, that's the connection. Alaska and New Mexico and me. There's a whole lot more to the Wrangell St. Elias National Park and Preserve up here, the Kennecott Mine ghost town. One other kind of cool, I I guess it's cool. Um, so as I stated, that town of Santa Rita, that town was there, like I said, and then they started mining in that. They started mining the Cobre pit, the Cobre mines, the Santa Rita pit. Like I said, that the town, the original town that was there, is no longer there. It's pretty much airspace where the town was before the open pit. They moved that town in the 1950s when it was discovered that it was located on a top large ore body. All that's remains of that is the photographs, and those who were born there in the now demolished hospital, as a kind of a funny ha joke, they consider themselves members of an exclusive club of people who were born in space because, like I said, the elevation of where the hospital was is no longer there. It's just air. There is a picture online, the big haul trucks that they haul that ore in, the big dump trucks there at the mines. Those tires are 8-9 feet tall. There's one over on the overlook on the highway looking down into the mine, into the pit. I've been to that. I've seen it several times, drove by it several times. So just some cool history around of what this country has done. And, just doing what it does. So there you have it. The connection between Alaska and specifically the area I was born, but my home state of New Mexico. Well, as I close out the show, I just want to say thank you for joining me. This is probably the fourth attempt I've tried to get this episode recorded and published. So please like, share, and if it gives you a chance to subscribe so that get anything, know when something new comes up. Contact me at upper_1_podcast@yahoo.com. That's the number 1. One thing I did not mention, I've kind of been watching The Masked Singer on Fox. I was a little, didn't like the way one of the judges acted when one of the contestants was revealed, so I kind of quit watching for a little bit, but I kept track. Amazingly, we've had 2 people from Alaska that were on it. Our former governor, Sarah Palin, and then Jewel. But the story I was getting at is I just watched this most recent episode. One of the characters was a donut, a big giant donut, and he made it all the way to the final 2, ended up not winning, but with all the clue packages, if you watch it, they give out clue packages, and then, when they're talking with a disguised voice, but while they're singing, you don't get to see who it is. You got to try to figure out who it is based on the clues and the voice. And I know that's why they have Jenny McCarthy as one of the judges, because she's a pop icon. It's got Robin Thicke and Nicole Scherzinger, who are musicians themselves, as well as actor Dr. Ken Jeong from the Hangover movie. Anyhow, what I was getting at is the donut turned out to be, and I got it by the clues before I even looked anything up on the internet, because they put out their guesses. It was John Snyder, Bo Duke. So I was pretty excited to have gotten that one right. I didn't see the episode with Sarah Palin. I would have gotten her based off the clues, because if you remember one of her speeches during her vice presidential election year, where she was trying to become vice president, she talked about being a mama bear with lipstick and hockey moms and all that. I would have gotten that one. Chris Jericho was on it. He's the lead singer of Fozzy. He's also a wrestler. I know his voice anywhere. I would have gotten it just by the voice, but yeah, it's pretty fun. That was just something new that I had forgotten to talk about earlier. But anyhow, thanks again. This is Scott with the Upper One Podcast. Like me on Facebook. Share my episodes. Email me. And hopefully, like I said, we're going into Christmas. Hopefully I can get this published. And if you listen to it, if I do get it published and you listen to it before Christmas, thank you. If you've listened to it after Christmas, I hope you've had a wonderful Merry Christmas with friends and family that you're spending it with. And a Happy New Year coming up. Safe and Happy New Year. Again, this is Scott. Haven't said it in a long time. Halfway up the Eagle River Valley in Eagle River, Alaska, where we have set a record for the snowiest winter to date. And I'm not sure. I'm looking forward to more, but I'm sure we're going to get some. But that's it. Have a great day. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. Here's to the next one.